Welcome back to the channel of Truth, Trust and Transparency. Today, I wanted to address a topic that is on the lips of every investor. Do you buy and sell chasing hotspots and reinvest the money into the next and the next and the next? Or do you buy and hold over a long-term period? Now, the reason why, in my opinion, that I think this one comes up a lot more than most is because of the buyer's agents that are popping up and sort of spruiking that this is the method to be able to produce large chunks of equity for investors to recycle and go again. But I think what you need to understand as an investor, how is that person incentivized? Well, if that person is incentivized, let's think of it as a real estate agent. A real estate agent is incentivized and typically paid, and the way I've paid them in the past when I'm selling something is to incentivize them to get the highest amount possible. So it makes sense the real estate agent's giving me advice to get the highest amount possible. A buyer's agent, on the other hand, is incentivized to buy property for you. So if they tell you to buy more properties, then it's obviously great for them in their business because they can charge you more and more times. Obviously, if you had scenario 2, a common sense scenario where you only had to purchase, say, 3 to 4 properties, it wouldn't be a very good business case for most of them because you'd only use them for a few times rather than something that creates a lot more transactions. They can charge you sometimes double, if not triple the amount of transactions. Think of a portfolio where you have to buy and sell 10 to 15 properties and they're charging you 25 grand a pop. That in itself is, enough money to be able to buy, a sports car or something like that. So I actually wanted to break down for you the difference between the two and look at the actual costs and the actual profit. And I think you'll be really surprised at the end of this episode on the true costs of the buy and sell versus the buy and hold. Now, for the purposes of this video, I have made the assumption that this is our little growth chart over here. We are going into the area that in the first year we'll do 10% growth. In the second year we'll do 20% growth. For the scenario 1, a lot of the BAs spruik selling after 2 years. And then obviously when you look at property data, it just doesn't go from 6 up to 20 and then back to 6. That's not how property data works. As we know, it's more like that. So it might be 6 here, you might get 10 on the way up, you might peak at 20, you get 10 again, and back to 6. Obviously, that's a really nice looking chart, and if they're all like that, it'd make it a lot easier to invest. But just the principle is that you're always going to have this bit of growth here at the end of the growth cycle that you need to think about. So, with that taken into consideration, I'm going to make the assumption that both scenario 1, the BA and the investor doing it themselves, are going to be looking at the data and buying in the same place with the same growth rate. Maybe it's the same suburb at a $450,000 purchase price. As I've said on a couple of previous videos and looking through the data myself, I believe that there is still really great options for investors out there in and around that sort of $500,000 mark. So I've just picked 450. Probably should have done 500 for a round number's sake, but we'll run with that because I know a lot of people purchasing at this price point. So $450,000 purchase, and for both of these, we're going to assume 10% deposit. So next thing, $450,000 purchase. On that, we're going to pay approximately $20,000 in stamps and $10,000 in LMI. Now, the reason why it's approximate is because the stamp duty is going to vary state to state and the LMI will vary bank to bank. But for the purpose of the video, I'm just going to keep it at round numbers so it's really easy to follow and do quick maths on. You're also going to pay anywhere between $20,000 or beyond for a buyer's agency fee doing it the BA way. I've seen them go anywhere between 20 to 25. I saw one the other day for $50,000. Can you believe it? And then you're going to pay about $5 grand in legal costs to be able to get in that property. Now, 2 years later, in the first year, the property's obviously done 10% to take it to $495,000, and then it's done 20% in the year after, taking it pretty much, I've rounded up a few $1,000s, but to $600K in value. That's where they come back to their clients and they say, oh, you should sell, cash out the equity, and invest and go again. I get it, but if I'm selling my $600,000 house 2 years later after it's had 30% of growth, how good? This is what you need to understand. When I sell, I'm going to pay 2% to the agent, $12,000 agent fees. I'm also going to pay that $5,000 for legal fees, conveyancing, maybe something to tidy the house up and all that kind of stuff. Marketing there that the agent might not put in his commission because he's a dirty dog and all those kinds of things. Anyway, when you sell a property, you have what's called a cost base. The cost base is essentially the costs associated with purchasing, holding, and selling the property. Now, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to make the assumption that holding it in the 2 years that you held the property, you're doing and claiming any ongoing property management fees and all that kind of stuff, all those costs, maintenance and expenses, and depreciation. So therefore, we will not include it in the cost base to make it really easy to follow. So if your cost base is $72,000, that means that you have made a $78,000 gain. So 450, 600, we've got that 150. Think of it like this. If this is 150, 150K, our cost base, it comes to 72K, which is essentially our costs. And then we say this part here is the profit, is the gain, $78,000. Now, because we've held this property for 2 years, we can use the CGT benefit, which is great, which means half of this we keep for free and half of it we pay tax on. Half of it's 39 grand, 39K. We pay tax on that at 0.45%. I'm just going to say, for the sake of this, it puts you into the 45% tax category. I haven't put in the Medicare levy. Leave me alone. I know my numbers. And then I've paid $17,550 in tax, which is 0.45% of 50% of this amount, because obviously we keep half with CGT, and then we go again. Now, on paper, this is where most people go wrong, so please pay attention. On paper, people go, okay, I bought it for $450, I sold it for 600 grand, I paid $17,550 in tax, I've made a gain of $132,450. Hooray, congratulations, that's so good, I've made so much money. This is where most people miss, and the buyer's agents aren't going to tell you. You've got what looks like a cash result, but to get there, you spent $72,000. Your cost base, think of it, stamp duty, not refundable, LMI. So the deposit is, because it obviously comes off the principal amount. These fees here are not refundable. They're costs that you've paid in cash or equity, which equals $72,000 of costs out of that 132. So we minus $72,000 of costs off that cash result, which means we've made a true profit after all the little costs that you missed and this little fee of $60,450. So it's taken you 2 years. You thought you made 150, you thought you made 130, when really, and we crunched the numbers on it, you've only made 60 grand in profit. $1,000 over 2 years. It's not as good as it seems, and this is why the buy and sell short term doesn't often work out. I've given you 30% growth. I've given you 2 years like most people say, but the $60,000, it's not really worth it in my opinion. This is what you do instead. Common sense approach, and hopefully I'll put up somewhere here, is the video I did if you own just one $500,000 property and the value of capital gains if you hold that long term. So let's run through the same scenario, but you taking a little bit more of a common sense approach. $450,000, same purchase, $20,000 in stamps, $10,000 in NLMI, $5,000 in legals. The only thing in the common sense approach that you're not paying for in purchasing costs is your BA fee. Now your loan is, let's just say as an investor, interest only, is still at $405,000 because you bought for $450, that was your purchase price. You put a 10% deposit down, means that your principal amount has not moved, but your value has. 80% of $600,000 means that you, my friends, have created $75,000 of usable equity. This is where, so not only have you created a bigger profit holding it this way, because you haven't had that transaction costs and you haven't had the transaction costs and paid tax, paid BA fees, paid selling fees. Not only have I made more money here, but this is the issue. This is what most people don't consider. In year 3, remember, we're coming off the back of the growth cycle here. We're still going to get somewhere around double digits worth of growth. But you don't have a $450,000 property now that's going to grow at 10%. People think you need to sell off here. You've now got a $600,000 value home that does 10%. So in year 3, in 1 year, off the back of that growth cycle, it goes up to 660, 10% of that. So now you've got a bigger valued property growing in that 3rd year. You've made 60 grand in that 10% growth rate on year. That's more than in this 2-year deal here. So you're a year quicker by holding it in year 3. Then in year 4, we have a $660,000 house that grows, let's just say returns back to the average somewhere around here, back at 6%. You now have a $660,000 house that goes up 40 grand to $700,000. Now the issue here is once you try to do this and go again, you've used up your deposit in this. So you have then $60,000 to get back into a similar market. My friend, you don't have the funds to compete. 10% deposit, 45 grand. You've only got 60 now because you used up your deposit and all your money. Doesn't work out. Here, I've got a $400,000 house, $400,000 property. Now, it can go back to 5%. And then guess what? Year 5 is going to be 735 grand. You're much better off because you have a larger value property now growing. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it returns back to its long-term average, which hopefully if you're investing, you've minimized the risk, RCS, all that kind of stuff, affordability. Even if that returns to 5%, you've now got a property worth $735,000 in year 5 on the 450 started with. We're almost in 5 years on that growth cycle. We've hit that 10%. Here, you're never going to get it. You're never going to get it. But obviously the people on this scenario that tell you to do this are benefited by the 2 transactions. The buyer's agent that's charging you 20, 25 grand is almost making as much as you in 2 years buying you 2 properties. The BA has stung you 25K. Let's say 20, I was being generous. But the BA has charged you 25 grand for this transaction and the next one. So the BA has made 50 grand on you and you've made $60,000. Doesn't seem like a good deal. Here, set and forget, baby. Set and forget. 450, 700, we've made 250 grand. We've made 250 grand by buying and holding and being patient. That's why, my friends, in my opinion, you always need to do the numbers and crunch the numbers yourself. Whether it's me doing it on this whiteboard, whether it's a buyer's agent trying to advise you, I strongly suggest you crunch the numbers yourself, because at the end of the day, you can't lie with something like this. This is straightforward. This is logical. I mean, the growth cycle, you can say maybe it spends another year, blah 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 blah, but what really kills you in this situation is the entry and the exit fees that you can't then get back. Because the best part about it is, as well, is if you wanted to extract equity out of this particular property or use this equity here, 75 grand. For you to match that, you would need to come up with 15 grand of cash, correct? 15 grand of your own cash to match that. But the issue is 15 grand of your cash isn't 15 grand of your cash, because if you're earning the top tax bracket and you're paying tax on that, that's probably 30 grand of your cash. It starts at 30K, then you pay tax on it. Then it goes down to 15 grand after you've given the taxman 45%, let's just say round numbers. Then you've added to that. So it's cost you so much more money than you think compared to here. Equity, I don't pay tax on equity. I did this equity extraction. Now, obviously, provided that you can service the equity, because we know equity is not free money. I need to be able to service it and take it out. I'm assuming that you will be able to if this is your first purchase. But the equity that I take out, the $75,000 is tax-free money ready to go again into my next deal. And if we're saying that we need to buy another deal and my entry costs are going to be 35,000 and my entry cost is 45K deposit plus 35, I need 80 grand for my next deal. I've just taken out 75 grand in equity. I'm pretty sure, I'm confident in you. I don't know you yet, but I'm confident that you're going to be able to save between here and here, 3 years, 5 grand to go towards that next deposit. That's, my friend, that is a logical common sense approach. If you want to rinse your money off and you want to see someone else gets rich, then sure, then go down a route that incentivizes them to sting you with transaction fees every single time because it suits their business model. But as you can see today, I think you're better off over here. And remember, I don't make money which one you do. I don't care. Take this and run with it yourself, but just know the true numbers and know the true costs, because a lot of people won't tell you and show you this. If you have any questions, please let me know. If not, I'll see you tomorrow.